Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia Counteroffensive 2026, the story of a 5-day window. 5 days that echoed louder across the south than weeks of routine artillery duels. Between February 11th and 15th, Ukrainian forces reclaimed 201 square kilometers east of Zaporizhzhia. Seizing a moment when Russian coordination crumbled, they achieved the fastest rate of advancement in over 2.5 years. But behind these figures are more than just arrows on a map. There are evacuations. There are villages where the buses have stopped coming. And there are people who say, nobody wants to die. The tactical landscape. We are talking about the eastern part of the Zaporizhzhia region, roughly 80 kilometers east of the city of Zaporizhzhia, where Russian troops had been ramping up pressure since the summer of 2025. In 2026, two key names emerged, the Huliopol and Alexandriivka sectors. Here, the counterattacks weren't about creating a pretty front line on a map, but a specific objective, breaking the enemy's momentum and preventing them from expanding their bridgehead near the administrative border. The human cost. In early February, police and volunteers began evacuating residents from Tavriska and Yorkivka as the situation deteriorated and the threat of attacks loomed. In one instance, a phrase was captured that explains the war better than any technical term or staff map. It's scary. Nobody wants to die. This was the backdrop for the events that would soon be labeled a counteroffensive, though professional analysts offer more nuanced assessments regarding its scale. A breakdown in communication. Starting February 9th, reports emerged of limited local Ukrainian counterattacks near the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions. While Russian mill bloggers initially dubbed this a broad counteroffensive, clarifications soon followed. The actions were limited in scope, and the boots-on-the-ground reality remained fluid. Why did the pace pick up in mid-February? Ukrainian forces likely exploited the blocking of Russian access to Starlink, which triggered severe communication and command issues for the occupiers on the battlefield. February 2nd, terminal verification began. February 5th, reports of mass outages along the contact line. Russian sources spoke directly about the degradation of their communications, while Ukrainian observer Mashovitz emphasized that these counterattacks were tactical rather than a large-scale campaign. The 5-day breakthrough. Between February 11th and 15th, Ukraine's defenders reclaimed 201 square kilometers. This marks the greatest success in such a short window since the summer of 2023. To put it in perspective, the area reclaimed in 5 days nearly equals all Russian gains made throughout the entire month of December 2025. This wasn't a victory parade. It was a rapid series of strikes delivered precisely where the enemy momentarily lost its footing. The gray zone and conflicting data. The front in this sector remains a gray zone. Some reports come from unofficial sources and cover areas the general staff may consider under constant control, even if de facto there is no stable presence. This explains why different mapping projects sometimes vary by a few kilometers. The vital takeaway remains. In February 2026, Ukraine shifted to active counterattacks to shave off enemy salients and seize the initiative. Official confirmation. On February 20th, President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a comment to AFP, stated, "As of today, 300 square kilometers have been liberated in the south." He did not specify the exact time frame, but added a crucial detail. Ukraine utilized the Russian forces' loss of Starlink access, even though Ukrainians experienced some disruptions as well. On February 22nd, the air assault forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine clarified that together with adjacent units, they restored control over 300 square kilometers and reported the liberation of 8 settlements in the Alexandriivka direction. Their logic serves as the operations brief: disrupt enemy plans, prevent a deep push into the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, and push the occupiers back from the administrative border. Their conclusion remained measured. It is premature to speak of final results. Conclusion: the geometry of war. Strip away the emotion, and the February events in Zaporizhzhia serve as a masterclass in how tactical counterattacks can reshape the geometry of the front. They flatten salients, complicate enemy logistics, and force the opponent to overstretch their reserves. A window of opportunity is rarely a miracle. It is a convergence of factors: coordination, communication, timing, and the readiness to strike exactly when the enemy cannot see the full picture. Ultimately, it is always a story about people. Behind every line on a map is someone with a suitcase, standing on a road, making the split-second decision to leave now. In February 2026, the Zaporizhzhia direction reminded the world, even in a war of attrition, rapid change is possible when timing, tactics, and a weak point in the enemy's command system align. 201 square kilometers in 5 days is not the end of the story. It is a chapter. But it is a chapter that explains what the initiative looks like when it returns home. Ukraine will prevail while Russia drifts towards the collapse of its state system. Thank you for watching. Support Ukraine in its fight for justice and independence. Glory to Ukraine.